Judge Sotomayor on the Supreme Court of the United States was apparently urging colleges to buy her books, making millions of dollars in the process. And you know, colleges and universities, they want to be in the good graces of a Supreme Court judge, and Sotomayor is one of them, one of the most powerful people in this country, one of 9 on SCOTUS. And she wrote a book. It is a kid's book and other books. These people write a lot of books. This one's called Turning Pages. And she apparently, her staff, was urging colleges and other entities to just gobble up these books. In fact, they were prodding colleges and libraries to just buy them. You see Judge Sotomayor, she's got a couple of her books listed here, Solo Pregunta and Just Asked, right, translated. And we have here attending an event promoting her new children's book. But the AP dug into this. They said for colleges and libraries seeking a bold-faced name for a guest lecturer if she was going to come and talk, few bigger names than Sonya Sotomayor, Supreme Court judge, rose from poverty. And she's benefited too from schools' purchases of hundreds, sometimes thousands of books that she's written over the years. Now, you're allowed to sell books and you're allowed to write books and people are allowed to buy them, and that's perfectly okay. But this is where we cross the line. Sotomayor's staff has often prodded public institutions that have hosted the justice to buy her memoir or her children's books, works that have earned her at least $3.7 million, baby, since she joined the court in 2009. Despite those events, largely out of the public view, by the way, they were obtained by the Associated Press through more than 100 open records requests to public institutions, resulting in tens of thousands of pages of documents offering a rare look at Sotomayor and other judges. In her case, the documents reveal repeated examples of taxpayer-funded court staff performing tasks for the justice's book ventures. Amazing. Which workers in other branches of government are barred from doing. But when it comes to promoting her literary career, Sotomayor is free to do what other governments can do because the Supreme Court does not have a formal code of conduct. Cannot do, because they don't have a formal code of conduct, leaving the judges largely to write and enforce their own rules. And we do have a statement from the Supreme Court. They actually have responded to this. They put out a release. We'll take a look at it and go through what they say, but this is more about Sotomayor. This is one of the most basic tenets of ethics law that protects taxpayers from misuse. Here's another book, Turning Pages, My Life Story. Not a big book, My Life Story. No. All right. So Supreme Court staffers have been deeply involved in organizing speaking engagements. This conduct is prohibited for Congress members and the executive branch. They're barred under ethics rules for using government staff for their personal financial gain. Selling her kid's book is not a Supreme Court duty. Lower federal court judges are also instructed to, quote, not lend the prestige of the office to advance their private interests. Now, the Supreme Court has issued a response to this, and then we'll get some reaction from Tom Cotton, who is another lawyer who is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. But the Supreme Court responded. They said the following. They said, hey, listen, everybody, relax, all right? The Judicial Code of Conduct encourages judges to stay connected to community activities, all right, and engage with the public, including by writing on both legal and non-legal subjects. And judges, including justices, routinely travel and speak to universities, colleges, and law audiences and affiliated individuals and entities. And judicial staff play an important role on these ethics, travel, and security. They say chamber staff also assist the judges in complying with judicial ethics guidance for these visits and for guidance relating to their published work. For example, they say ethics guidance suggests that judges may sign copies of their books, which may also be available for sale, but there should be no requirement or suggestion that the attendees are required to purchase the books. And so they say Sotomayor's judicial assistant has worked with the justice's publisher to ensure compliance, and at no time have attendees been required to buy a book. Of course, they're not required to in order to attend an event. Nobody's saying that they were, buy a book and get a ticket in. But it would be very nice if you did buy 50,000 books in order to get her to show up. Asking whether attendees were reminded that they must either buy or bring a book in order to enter a signing line at an event would in no way conflict with what's described above. Reminding them that they must either buy or bring a book in order to enter the signing line, right? Very sneaky. These are Supreme Court judges. They're very smart. So chamber staff also play an important official role in protecting the judges who are high-profile public figures. Schools have occasionally invited Sotomayor to take part in a program in which they select a book for an entire school or a freshman class, and the justice gives a book talk. Everybody's got to get a copy of the book if you want to come in and sit there, and you go to the college and you get the whole class a copy of the books. When she is invited to participate in a book program, chamber staff recommends the number of books based on the size of the audience so as not to disappoint attendees who may anticipate books being available, and they will put colleges and universities in touch to do so. So they'll say Sotomayor is going to come speak. We're going to need a couple thousand books available just in case people want them. If they want them, they can buy them. And so they load them up. Justice Sotomayor would have recused herself in cases involving her public publisher if they were in front of the court. An inadvertent omission failed to bring their participation in several cases to her attention. Those cases were not selected for review, and they've changed their conflicts checks since this came to light. So her publisher was in fact involved in some lower level cases, but they never made their way up into chambers. The justices engage in extrajudicial activities like speaking on both legal and non-legal subject, and the code encourages public engagement to avoid isolation from the law and from the society in which they live. I think that's a good thing. The court routinely asks event organizers to confirm that an event at which a justice will speak is not a fundraiser. We're not going and showing up at fundraisers. The court follows up with event organizers, and the court's practice has been useful. Justices have declined to be featured in events, even though event organizers told them that they were not fundraisers. Justices exercise caution when going to these events, and merely attending an event where an elected official might also be there does not necessarily make it impermissible. And they say, look, finally, the justices are limited, by the way, to earning only around $30,000 per year for teaching activities. Teaching must be in an accredited institution and must be approved by the Chief Justice. Thanks for that. So she did nothing wrong, and $3.7 million lands in her pocket. No big deal at all. Tom Cotton brought this up. He says, pretty interesting double standards here. A lot of people on the left are screaming and hooting and hollering about the right justices, fishing trips and things like that. And Tom Cotton is saying, yeah, pretty interesting. They're not crying from the rooftops about Sotomayor grifting $3.7 million from college universities.
Senator, you're on Judiciary Committee, right?
I am on the Judiciary Committee, yes.
Have you read the AP story about Justice Sotomayor yet?
I saw the news, that apparently, according to the story, Justice Sotomayor's staff encourages, let's say, institutions that host her for speeches or other events to buy copies of her books. Surprisingly, it's not getting above the old front page coverage from New York Times.
Yeah.
I bet it's not the lead story on CNN or MSNBC, unlike left-wing media's hit jobs on Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. Just another example of the double standard the left uses in their campaign to try to delegitimize the court because it has a center-right majority on it.
Now, there was a deep interest in Justice Alito's fishing trip from a decade ago because Paul Singer had some connection with a case that didn't get heard. Now I look here that Justice Sotomayor's staff pushed University of California, Davis to buy her books, the University of Wisconsin to buy her books, Clemson University to buy her books. She has made $3.7 million since she joined the court from book sales. Now, you're an author. Have you made $3.7 million from Only the Strong?
I haven't gotten my latest royalty statement yet, Hugh, but I don't think I've quite cracked that measure
That's
yet.
nice.
I certainly would like to, as I know you would as a fellow author.
Yeah, but I don't ever demand anyone buy a set. You didn't either. When you came to the Nixon Library, we sold. You don't demand people do that.
I guess you could. You're a private citizen, but no, as a United States Senator or Supreme Court Justice, I think it's somewhat inappropriate to demand institutions buy your book before you appear at it. The events I've done, like we did with you at the library, simply offer the book for sale and signature afterwards.
And you don't even have to be aggressive with it. It's just, the Supreme Court is coming to speak here. Sotomayor is a Supreme Court justice. Might be nice if you bought some of her books there. Colleges are like, oh, I get it. How many should we buy? And universities are big. A lot of books to be bought. I remember when I was in college, I had a professor who wrote all of his books. And so he sold all of his books. And I had some pretty big classes. And everybody would have to buy his books every semester for every class. And he had hundreds of kids every class, huge auditoriums for freshman year classes. Buy my books. Buy my books. He probably made more money off the books than he did off his university salary. And so this is the Supreme Court now doing it. Left pretty silent about it. They'll scream from the rooftops about Judge Alito or Judge Thomas, but when their side does it, not much to talk about. Of course, we'll continue to cover it as we do. Thank you for joining and following along.